Is the US dollar going to get taken over as the number one reserve currency in the world anytime soon? I mean, the short answer to this question is no, and the long answer is probably as follows. So you might have seen in the media over the last year or two, especially over COVID and the debt expansion, that they keep saying that things like the yuan, the euro, all of these alternative currencies are going to take over the US dollar as the number one currency in the world. And it's simply not true, or not even possible to be true. I mean, for one, you just have to look at things from a very, very practical sense. The US is the largest economy in the world and has grown massively over the last decade and a bit, actually. If you compare the Eurozone economy to the US economy, maybe in 2005-ish, they were at the same level. The Eurozone economy hasn't actually grown that much, whereas the US economy has gone from about 15 trillion and equal to the Eurozone at that time to about 22, 23 trillion now, whereas the Eurozone has stayed at about 15 to 16 trillion. So not much growth there at all. And then there's the added fact that, the digital infrastructure of the world runs pretty much on the dollar. All credit infrastructure is based around the dollar economy. And then you've got the other fact that, the US military is the largest in the world. That by itself is a huge, huge backer of the dollar. But if we go into things like, the credit side of things, which I think is the most important aspect here, whenever central banks need liquidity, so like in March 2020, for example, they go to the dollar markets. You might have heard that the Fed had to open up FX swap lines with different central banks around the world to permit credit to keep flowing. And it's because of this that makes the dollar so important to all economies globally. I mean, there's no country on the world where you couldn't take dollars and exchange them for some meaningful value. Now, the China debate is a very, very interesting one because people keep saying that the yuan is going to take over and is going to become, this all-powerful currency. But there's two issues with this. So firstly, China's economic power is actually based on US demand. If the US demand for Chinese goods wasn't there, then Chinese GDP would be a lot flatter than what it was. And this is actually why China recently has been trying to transition to a domestic consumption economy rather than an export-led economy. See, when China sells yuan $4, or when an American person buys Chinese goods, the transaction that occurs is, okay, they have dollars, they have to swap for yuan to be able to purchase the goods, and then China retains those dollars. China then takes those dollars and buys US treasuries, which is one reason why China is such a large holder of US treasuries. It's not, out of the goodness of their heart. They just want to earn a yield. And the easiest way to do that is in the most liquid instrument in the world, one of the most liquid instruments in the world, which is US treasuries. And so if you really want to displace the US dollar as this real central power of global economies and credit flow, then you're going to have to give up some of that GDP growth coming from China, because there's no way really that they're going to be able to get out of that dynamic at all. And then we get onto the fact that, the dollar as a central component of the world is really the best option at the end of the day. I know there may be fans of crypto that believe in sound money, that believe in, the idea that a fixed supply of something means that you're going to get a better outcome, basically. But at the end of the day, the dollar is currently the most feasible aspect of a global monetary system. There is nothing better. I mean, even if you look at growth rates, would you rather have the euro, which has really, really stagnant growth, versus the US dollar, of which the economy is at 5.2%? It comes down to maths at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, I would much rather be using the currency of an economy that is growing still quite rapidly at a much higher level than economies and countries with growth rates that are lacking, let's say. Or at least with China, the debt burden is so huge compared to even the US that the yuan just doesn't become a viable alternative. So I think it's key to pause as well and look at the history of dollar doomers too, because there's one specific chart that shows the dollar has lost like 99% of its purchasing power over the last 50 or 60 years. And the first critique of this in your mind should be that this is basically assuming that no one has ever earned interest, that no one has ever seen a wage increase, and that no one has ever seen a rise in living standards. So whenever you do hear doom, instantly critique, because at the end of the day, being long humanity, being long ingenuity, and being long growth is probably the best factor to success in the markets and for your overall worldview.